Hi there, Ed Merrison from CellarHand here. I'm here in the Mornington Peninsula with Mr. Paul Scorpo. We're having a look at his new release, 2020 Old Cherry Orchard Pinot Noir. So that's where we're standing right now, just over our shoulder here, the Old Cherry Orchard. Paul, tell us what was so special about this particular block.
I think the most important thing was that there were some apples and cherries, just the remnants of, and from the people that owned it, I sort of learned that the production was fantastic.
Yeah.
And the cherries and the apples were absolutely full of flavour, and I thought that I would leave that till I was ready I wanted to see what the site would do and then decide what to put in there, basically.
Yeah, and so the soils we're talking about here, you'll notice on Paul's top bottlings of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir the word Eocene. That's the kind of soil that we're looking at really across the site, and that's the same here. So what's so special about that? Well,
it's a geological description, geological epic, and it relates to when Tasmania, when Australia and Antarctica parted, big rift valley opened up, and lava came out of that rift valley and covered some of the peninsula, and created the lava that was sort of from 3 meters to 30 meters deep. Here on my place, it's about, the soils are 3 meters deep down to 10 meters deep.
Yeah, right. So after all this weathering over those millions of years, we've ended up with this iron-rich, well-draining clay loam soils up here on the peninsula. Here, up in these higher parts. Fantastic for growing fruit. I mean, there's fruit everywhere.
Well, they were seen as the best horticultural soils in Victoria.
Yeah.
And they're very rare. There's only this and a tiny bit of McLaren Vale. Yeah. And anything that I grow here, vegetables or fruit, the flavours are really intense and distinct.
Yes.
And I was hoping that would carry over to the grapes when we did plant, and they have. So we've made a pretty, I think, wines that are full of flavour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, and that iron richness means that the wines age well too. They seem, the structure and the tannins that we can produce augur well for the long term.
Yeah, so and to put that timing into context in terms of the site, so Paul planted his 1997 vines, the original vineyard, back in 1997 with a lot of help from friends and family.
Yes.
Yes. And then, as you said, waited by this time before planting this. Now what we've got behind us here, we've got the camera here hanging on a fruiting wire from the Chardonnay, which is just above our heads. Behind us though, just up to around just below chest height really, we've got the vines trimmed, but more importantly down the trunks here on the first fruiting wire are only at about 40 centimeters off the ground. Yeah. And you might notice as well, another thing you'll see on this, by the way, extremely pretty label, we've got the word 10K here. So that 10K refers to the 10,000 vines per hectare density of this planting here, and as I said, they're lower trained. So what's so important about the specific way that you've decided to create this vineyard then?
Well, the important thing was to choose the clone that I thought would be best for the site.
Yep.
And also the way that we farm it. Although it's not really farming, it's really gardening in this vineyard.
Yeah.
And the way that we sort of prune it. So this is pruned to the Poussard method, which is time consuming, but it gives you really balanced vines, which hopefully give us balanced fruit. The most important thing about the gardening is that we're trying not to use herbicides, and we haven't for a number of years. We basically have an undervine cultivator. So all the effort is really to give the vines, to feed the soil and look after the soil, so that everything there for what the wine what the grapes require.
Yeah, and Paul mentioned there just the specific clone, because this is another part of the story. So, as I said, the 1997 plantings down here, planted to MV6, really the Peninsula's signature grape, MV6, hailing originally from Clos de Vougeot in Burgundy in France. Here, though, we have something different, planted back in 2013 once Paul had decided that the vineyard, this particular block that had hitherto been unplanted, deserved a special treatment. And what is the clone? What's so special about it? Where did it come from?
Well, the clone is Abel, or the gumboot clone, and it came from cuttings that a New Zealand rugby player, we think, it's never been, his name's never been disclosed because he would have had to go to jail. But it's it's a clone that produces these really quite opulent wines, and that have a very fine, really fine tannins, and there's an elegance to the wines. The really distinguishing feature, I think, is the texture, the palate. You know, the phenolics that you get, the tannins that you produce, and how that texturally translates in as you're drinking it.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Abel clone, ABEL here, that Paul got with the help of Kiwi Pinot legend Larry McKenna, and a little bit of help from Keith Harris as well, the former viticulturist down.
Well, Keith Harris let me have the cuttings, which Larry had sent over to Yabby Lake.
Yeah, right. So that's where this all comes from. So that balance then of this specific viticulture here, is, you say, gardening this site, 10,000 vines per hectare, and the balance in the canopy. You were saying earlier that your Abel clone, you know, one of the lovely things about it is that voluptuous, that silkiness, and the way that the tannins present themselves.
Yes.
On the palate, but that's the balance as well of keeping that under control with this particular management.
It can be. Look, if it's planted, if you plant it traditionally at 2,500 vines per hectare, you finish up with huge bunches.
Yeah.
So it can get out of hand. So, you know, we're very, you know, we basically we're not interested in covering the fruiting wire. Very rarely water it.
Yep.
You know, obviously, if it's flowering, the soils were dry, I'd water it. But we try not to, and we haven't had to. You know, the dam's being used to water my lawn, basically. So if we don't cover the fruiting wire, and as you can see, it's quite open. The canopy, this year, which was a very difficult year, this produced 2 tons to the acre, where everything else produced 600-700 kilos to the acre.
Right.
So the vines really protect themselves.
Yeah.
And you know, sort of, so they basically help us, and we sort of do everything possible to help them.
Yeah. Well, and in 2020, just tell us a little bit then about what we can expect from this wine, this particular vintage.
Well. It's probably one of the most elegant wines that we've made.
Yep.
Look, the 17 was the first.
Yep.
And it's to do with the season. It was the coolest season we've ever had. Very low cropping year, because we had high winds early in when they weren't even, when the inflorescences were there, and then at flowering we had some rain, so we got around about a tonne to the acre. So quite a small crop, and you know, the young vines, and you know, because we prune hard, we try not to. I hate dropping fruit.
Yeah. So
we'd rather, you know, control the number of shoots that we have than cover the canopy, cover the fruiting wire, and then have to drop fruit. And 2020, once we got over the problems of the small crop, turned out to be the longest fruiting period, and the most fantastic autumn that we ever had, and the latest we've ever picked on the peninsula, even later than 2002.
Yep.
So we picked it on the, you know, at the end of 27th, I think 27th of March.
Yeah. So a long, cool season. Not a huge amount of wine made from 2020 in general, but what there is pretty fantastic, and we're lucky to have from Paul a Chardonnay from a specific vineyard selection up here on the vineyard, another Pinot Noir from those 1997 MV6 plantings we spoke about, and this one as well, so the 2020 Old Cherry Orchard Pinot Noir from Paul's Scorpo. Look out for it. And Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed.